you look around now and you think, well, not too many teams have got complicated badges that are hard to reproduce, that don't look good in isolation. You know, maybe
the old-fashioned town crests have largely vanished.
Yeah, and I think there's a place for them within your range and within your offerings. Yeah. But I think that's not the way branding really should go directly. And I think there's maybe Catalans is now starting to look a bit tired. Not bad. I just think maybe it might need neatening up, sharpening up. And Warrington still, I think they got it wrong with what's behind the new Wolf when they did that about 5 years ago or so. But the actual Wolf part in the middle is good and does all the things that I've just said about what the whole KR Robin does. So just get rid of the weird plectrum part and lightning part behind it, and then I think that can just be smoothened out just ever so slightly. And you're talking about small tweaks for most people, but no one now needs to make a big shift in their branding, I don't think. I think everyone can work with what they've got in a range of ways, and people should be, I think, positive about that. And
I do.
Yeah.
I do too.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks to those of you that got in views on the week's news. Look out for the Google form links for that. If you can't find them on any particular day, if you go to superleaguepod.com, click on the blog post, it'll be there. Within that, shout out of course to our friends BBC Sport Rugby League page, totalrl.com, loverugbyleague.com. They provide the news stories for us to comment on, so it's only fair that we give those guys a shout out and tell you guys to click on their news stories. If you are on their pages and any news story comes across that you want to have a chat about, then that's when you drop it on the fan views form and we'll make sure we talk about it. Okay, that's the news this week. We'll now move on to the Super League match reviews.
So, in game one, it was St Helens versus Leeds. There were 12,568 in the ground. About 9,500, 10,000 of those were actually paying guests, and the rest were some NHS free tickets for local St Helens frontline staff.
Which is a positive story. It's a shame that that didn't encourage more to be in, but it helped make the Leeds end look full.
Yeah, it did, and it added to the atmosphere in the ground, I think. Mark. Referee was Chris Kendall. It was 28 points to 6, game over at half time, and it finished 40 points to 6. There are incomplete team stats. For the winning Saints side, Alex Walmsley, who was by far the man of the match, one try assist, 13 tackle busts, 275 metres and 4 clean breaks. Tommy Makinson, 1 try, 232 metres. Regan Grace, a try and 130 metres. Lachlan Coote, 1 try assist, 4 tackle busts, 126 metres. Ash Handley for the losing side. Ash Handley, 7 tackle busts and 183. Reece Martin, 45 tackles, and Jack Broadbent, 7 tackle busts and 111 metres. We had one disciplinary out of this. Lachlan Coote has been banned for 1 game for a Grade B offence for using his knees in the try scored by Dyer just before half time.
When we sort of caught up on that, didn't we, before we started, to make sure we knew exactly which incident it was. But when you watch it back, it's pretty obvious. And his knees came in without any real ability to impact on the score happening or anything like that. So it's a fair shout for me, that one. Yeah,
fair shout. No problems with it. He probably would have been rested this week anyway. So having now secured second spot. We only have one fan view on this game, sadly, which is from my boy.
We got a second one in. One came late, but I'll let you do your lads first.
Okay, so at JW Powell 9, who just simply says Alex Walmsley baby, which is Alex's son. Alex Walmsley baby. I thought I'd pick up your singing theme, Mark, from
Better than me,
from
but worse than many others, I'm sure.
I'm used to singing that one on the terraces. That's why. Go on then. Give us the other fan view.
Mike at MikeWeb58 said, "Not the best Leeds team, but you can only beat what is there. And let's not forget, Saints are missing both grand final winning halfbacks. Big Al was extraordinary, and the two reserve halfbacks did okay for kids. Winky face."
Yeah, this was over as a contest pretty quickly in the first half. I mean, it started bizarrely with Leeds running the ball on the last and turning the ball over on halfway line. I mean, I don't know whether that was a plan.
I can't imagine it was.
If it was bloody mad, because pretty much everyone knows now if you let Saints set up camp in your half, you're probably not getting out of your half pretty much for the rest of the half.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the case.
They gave up the territory straight away, and then
until we gave away a couple of penalties late on, then they didn't really get anywhere near our end of the.
I think the first time they had an attack, they scored.
Yeah, that was it. From the
which has happened a few times against Saints this year.
Yeah,
it's just people don't get attacks often enough.
They don't get into our 20 with tackles to spare enough to challenge our line defence, and that was the case here. I mean, that was Leeds' only time on our line, basically.
Yeah, until sort of late on when they had a few scrappy players, when they had young Corey Johnson was on the pitch then at that stage. And yeah, one thing I think for Leeds, the whole Myler and Broadbent swapping and mixing and matching and Lehman was good and stuff at Magic Weekend. That all seemed to work quite seamlessly there, the way they'd set up with the playmakers. And this game, it didn't do the same. It felt like no one was really in charge. And I put that down to playing against a different level of intensity of defence against you, which makes your decision-making it needs to be better, it needs to be sharper, it needs to be quicker. And it just wasn't there for Leeds, whereas, for Saints, it was just strap on Big Al's back, weren't it? And see how far he can take you, which was to 28-0.
Keep turning the ball down the middle to Alex, who would just run straight through the middle of the under-strength Leeds pack. I mean, Leeds were clearly, missing Galechki and one or two others out of their first choice six.
As well, yeah.
And Alex took full advantage of that and just smashed it down the middle. And once it happened we just ran the same play again because they clearly couldn't handle him. So it was great to watch if you were a Saints fan, but it must have been pretty horrible sitting there if you were one of the 150 Leeds fans that made it across the Pennines into the South Stand, because it was into the East Stand, because it was. Alex just destroyed the centre of Leeds, Leeds middles.
Yeah, and undoubtedly Leeds could and should have done better on a few of the instances, especially the big
weak
play, the break that led to Makins' try, which was the try of the game. Even though the tip on from Walmsley was maybe forward, let's not dwell too much on that though, because it was great run from him and great work. But it wasn't like he was just running. He wasn't picking on the small guys. He was running through Reece Martin through most of this, who had an absolute nightmare, really. Yeah. And
I think it was Cam Smith that missed the tackle on that particular one.
Yeah, you may be right.
Which again, he's not no slouch when it comes to defending usually. Cam
No, it's
Smith.
not like he was looking at young Broadbent and running at him all day, was it?
No. But obviously, as a Saints fan, it was a very thoroughly enjoyable game. There was a really good example, sort of 10 minutes into the second half, of what Saints do well, which we were talking about in terms of style of play earlier. We made a few mistakes, few penalties, 6 again against us, I think, and Leeds took up residence in our part of the field. But this Saints side doesn't. It just goes through the processes. We just get back to playing at our sets of 6, kicking long, defending like mad, and I think it took us 5 sets but within 5 sets we were recamped within the inside Leeds half, and they didn't get out again until right near the end of the game.
I think in the first half you were playing with a confidence off the back of what Walmsley was doing for the most part, where you actually were playing attacking eyes up rugby and weren't thinking about just going through the process. But Wolf clearly gets you in at half time and says, guys, let's not get excited and play good rugby here. Let's just chill out and not try and play good rugby.
I mean, I think we did play very good rugby, and what I've noticed with the two young halfbacks and Coote on the field is far more often they'll leap down the same side, so we'll just overload down one side of the ruck. So a couple of times in the first half, suddenly, Dodd, Welsby and Coote all appeared on the same side of the ruck and just overloaded the attack. And they've got good hands. And they did it at Magic Weekend against Catalan as well, and it worked again here. And then Dodd's very good at scouting along the line. He scouts along the line and picks up, makes himself available for offloads, picks up the offload, and then just recycles the ball and brings in the next guy. And it led to Walmsley's try in the first half as well. He does that a lot. So once we are set up camp in someone's half, we are playing some, I think, much nicer rugby than we were doing earlier in the season. It's when we end up defending in our own half, that's when we start just going back to basics, grinding it out until we can sort of regain a foothold at the other end of the field.
Yeah, I mean there were some tries like with a bit of poor defending as well from Leeds, and the Welsby and Knowles try that kind of, by that point it was almost feeling like, well, they can't control Walmsley and then they can't defend their own line. So it kind of felt ominous, didn't it, anyway, in the opening 20 minutes? I mean, that was that for Leeds.
I'd have a little bit more sympathy with them on the Knowles ones. I think Knowles is phenomenally strong. He's really, really hard to control near the line. And we played him into the second row in this game for a streak of this game, and that's when he scored tries, one in both halves, and he scored a couple against Catalan as well. I think he's very hard to control near the line. The Welsby try was an absolute shocker. I mean, good for Jack for keeping going, but honest to goodness, some of the tackling was pretty dreadful.
Yeah.
To let him, there's no way he should have been able to score that try, and he did. Anyway, it was a thoroughly deserved win against a fairly lacklustre and weakened Leeds side, but we'll take it. Guarantees second in the league now for us, and it means that if we want to do so, we can start resting a few players for the final game of the season, because there's nothing on it for Salford either. So,
an interesting conundrum that. We'll get into that when we do the predictions later on, I think, a little bit about who might rest what where, because we can talk about some of the other teams in that regard as well. Just one mention for Leeds. I do think they were clearly outmatched in this game massively, but they have continued to kind of have to play a lot of young players, but play a lot of young players. So Corey Johnson came back in for his second debut after his sort of spell out of the professional game. Jared O'Connor, Sam Walters, Tom Holroyd. None of them looked like shocking. I just think, this is learning development for these young forwards. I don't think it's going to necessarily do them a ton of harm to have the odd game where they come up against people who are already established as outstanding, like Walmsley and Knowles, and kind of see this is what we have to be. And still they had some players who tried their hardest, like Richie Myler worked really hard, but it wasn't to be, I don't think, at all for Leeds in this game. No,
it's very difficult for any backs to play behind a pack that's as badly beaten as the Leeds pack was on Friday. There you go.
Let's move on to the Saturday action then. The first game to talk about was Hull FC 0, Wigan 10. This game was a miserable 0-0 at half time in front of 10,043 spectators. Liam Moore was the referee, so I'm sure he was getting an absolute shellacking at the ground where he's the favourite ref. What I would say, that 10,000, again, kind of you would hope there'd be more.